Hello, essay fans. It is Sunday, and I just finished grading your essays about how the relationship changed between the British North American colonies and the motherland after the French and Indian War. There are quite a few of you who had trouble with this one in blueprinting in your introduction, in answering the question in your introduction, and transferring your blueprint to the body paragraphs as good topic sentences that answered the question. So, if you had trouble with that, what I'd like you to do is go and look at this podcast, see how I did. Don't hold any spelling grudges against me. It's the first time I used a new technology to try and capture what was on the screen as I did it, and so it's a little rough, to be honest with you, but I hope it will do you some good, particularly if you feel like you've been spinning your wheels with what it means to answer the question. So without further ado, here we go to how to build this introduction.
Let's say I have an essay question that asks me, in what ways did the French and Indian War alter the political, economic, and ideological relations between Great Britain and its North American colonies between 1754 and 1775? Well, what do I know about this that I want to write about? I don't necessarily have to start with political. I'm going to start with economic and think of things like, an end to salutary neglect. And what is it that triggers that? Well, it's because the war is expensive and Britain needs to collect taxes, like the Sugar Act, followed by the Stamp Act. Probably then what we're going to talk about is perhaps, the Townshend duties, the reaction of the colonies to all of these taxes. The Boston Tea Party might be in there, but this is really just a brainstorming stage at this point. Let's take a look at a map that I've got. Here I have a map that we can say that I hastily constructed using a thinking map or a tree. Notice the three things: ideological change, economic change, and political. What I'm going to do is just kind of think of the kinds of things that I believe fit in these categories. If you notice, under economic, an end to salutary neglect leads to new taxes, underneath the Sugar Act, so far, so on, and all that. I want to go from an economic change, perhaps then into an ideological change as people begin to realize and get organized during the war. Protests of these taxes create more unity in the Stamp Act and the First Continental Congress, Second Continental Congress, and this will eventually lead to a political shift, a shift from loyalty to rebellion. So let's see how this might look if I was writing the introduction. So the very first thing that I want to do once I finish brainstorming is figure out how do I set my time and place. And I'm going to use the prompt to do that, and it will look something like this. So I believe that after the French and Indian War, in the last half of the 18th century, I've used the prompt, I've used these years right here. I've just kind of tweaked it around a little bit. Instead of using the years, I just used the last half of the 18th century. And then I just want to put my readers where we are. And I think that after the French and Indian War in the last half of the 18th century, the relationship between the British colonies and the mother country were altered to the point that they could not be salvaged. Basically, what I'm trying to get the reader to realize is that I know this war is going to have a fundamental change in between the British and the colonials, and it can't be fixed, can't be saved, and it's going to result in a rebellion. The next thing that I'm going to want to do is figure out my blueprint. What am I going to say in 3 sentences about the political, economic, and ideological relationship and how they changed so it sets me up for my thesis? With the economic situation first, I could just go in and say that economic relations changed between the colonies and the mother country. But that really doesn't tell me why. So, economic relations changed between the colonies and mother country when Britain stopped the policy of salutary neglect. Now, great, so they stopped the policy of salutary neglect, but how does that change the relationship? So, if I want to finish off the sentence, I'm going to say, and the colonists would react in a negative and rebellious nature. Oops, I can't spell. Rebellious nature. So that goes from a simple thing of saying economic relations change between the colonies, period, to telling me why. Now from there, I'm probably going to go to political changes. Political changes between the colonies. Oh, boy, I'm having a hard time typing today. Changed radically as well after the French and Indian War. Now, just to say political changes between the colonies happened after the war doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't tell me a fact. It doesn't tell me how it drove them apart. So I'm kind of thinking that political changes between the colonies, or, well, let's see. Change between the colonies changed radically. I don't like that. Political changes, let's change that to relationships so I answer the question. And we're going to say, what happened? Well, as the colonists went from loyal subjects to stark, raving, mad sons and daughters of liberty. Now, if you notice, I'm not using any listing of concrete details like they went from the Stamp Act to the Intolerable Acts to the First Continental Congress, because I want to give myself enough room that I can write about anything. So by saying they went from loyal subjects to stark, raving, mad sons and daughters of liberty, there's all kinds of things I can write about using that as a topic sentence. And then finally, I need something about ideological relationships. And so this is my zinger. At the end, I just want to say, most significantly, the ideological relationship went from members of, let's say, an empire to a new experiment in democracy, as these events led directly to, guess what? Da, 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 the American Revolution. And there I have it. I'm ready to go.
So now that I've got my introduction, how do I take what I've blueprinted up above when I went, the economic relations changed, political relationships changed, and most significantly the ideological relationship changed, how do I take those and make sure I follow them throughout my paper? Well, it's simple. I want to take this statement because it's my first part of my blueprint, and I'm really going to copy it and come down to my first paragraph, and this could become the first topic sentence of a paragraph. The economic relations changed between the colonies and the mother country when Britain stopped the policy of salutary neglect, and the colonists would react in a negative and rebellious nature. I'm not going to write the whole paragraph for you, but we know the following things to be true: that the Sugar Act was enacted to try and collect taxes, and it didn't work because of smuggling. So in order to raise money, the British tried the Stamp Act, but the colonists boycotted this act. We know that the Sons of Liberty became engaged in this whole process. We know that the Stamp Act Congress formed for the first time, bringing just about every single colony together to protest this. And we know the Stamp Act Congress issued things called the Declaration of Rights and Grievances, if I can spell it correctly. And we also know that the Stamp Act was repealed because nothing was being collected. Now, from this, there's a lot of different conclusions you can draw and commentary that you can make, but we know that when salutary neglect goes bye-bye and taxes start being increased, it's going to create a change in the relationship. And the colonists are going to start thinking about, whoa, wait a minute, maybe I'm not feeling the love here anymore. And then you just simply transition from this to your next paragraph, which is going to be about, guess what? The political relationship changed, because we now need to talk about how they go from being, loyal subjects to stark, raving, mad sons and daughters of liberty. So after I've written about all these items here, I'm going to come down and take that next part of my blueprint. I'm going to make it a topic sentence for the next paragraph. And in here, you know, start grading mad. Well, let's talk about the Stamp Act riots, perhaps, and tarring and feathering, and how we have this shift, if you will, because of the end of salutary neglect, because of this, to people being disloyal. If I want to write about common sense, I could put it here. I might put it somewhere else, but really all I'm doing now is just kind of brainstorming. To finish this off, the final section of my paper is going to be about this, and I believe it's the most significant, so that's why I said in the intro it's the most significant. I'm going to take that, put it down here in the next part of my paper, and this will become a topic sentence. Now, I don't necessarily want to copy the sentences exactly, so I might tweak them a little bit as I go through this. So instead of saying most significantly the ideological relationship, I just might change it to say that as economics and ideology changed, they created the most significant rupture. Let's see if I can spell it in the relationship. Having a hard time typing today. You know, and just use that and take little bits and pieces of what we see above here and put those in. Just saying the same thing, saying it a little differently. But you know what? If you can't do that, it's perfectly okay just to leave it like this. Just hopefully you can type better than I can. And remember, in here, you're going to write about how these events directly lead to the American Revolution, and that sets you up for your conclusion when you're done.